What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with the overall market, what's happening with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, as we have some very important things going on. Not to mention why next week is going to be very important. We have some very important data coming out, not to mention earnings. So I'm going to break down what the earnings are, how this could affect the markets, and why you need to be prepared for what's about to come going forward. But before I break anything down, all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Mumu link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Mumu, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's going on with the markets thus far. So I just wanted to mention to everyone, we had a very interesting day. We saw SPY actually bump up to a new all-time high, and we were talking about this pump that could have been coming if we got a decent PCE, and that's what ended up happening so far. So that was good for SPY and the QQQ out there. The PCE data was quite decent, showing signs that inflation is still under control, at least according to the data. That's what it's suggesting, right? Not saying I trust everything completely, but let's just go with the data for now. And then the thing about that is, despite that data, SPY ended up selling off a little bit as the day went on. We got some profit taking, and SPY ended up closing very flat. This is something that was mentioned yesterday as a possibility. But for Tesla, what I was expecting was a bounce, and we actually kind of got that on Tesla. You guys can see this right here. For the others out there, Aapl was actually even weaker than what I was expecting. QQQ a little bit weaker as well. And besides that, everything else was pretty close. But the question is, what's going to happen for next week? What are the catalysts that are going to really affect this market? Well, I want to first talk about the economic calendar, because I think it's more important I go over this first. So Monday is going to be a very quiet day. There's not really anything coming out, just the Fed manufacturing index, very minor. But for Tuesday, we have some JOLTS job openings coming out. The Fed's going to be monitoring all of this, watching to see how it looks, because we're getting ready for something very, very big. On Wednesday, it's going to be January 31st. Firstly, this is the last trading day of the month, okay? Wednesday, January 31st. What is so important about this coming Wednesday? The answer is we have the FOMC meeting, right? We're first going to find out the Fed interest rate hike decision. We're very confident it's just going to be a pause, or they're just not going to raise rates. They're just going to skip, or whatever you want to call it. They're not going to raise rates. They're going to keep them the same. Most definitely. I don't see them cutting either. There's no reason for them to cut, especially because the last CPI was a little bit hotter than expected. So that's very important to note. Okay, so the market is not expecting them to cut at all. We're expecting them to keep the rates the same. But the biggest thing, it's not just that, because we know that's going to happen. The biggest thing is going to be this. At 11:30 a.m., we have the press conference with Jerome Powell giving his speech. When Powell opens his mouth, the whole market's going to go bananas. It's going to go berserk. So make sure you're prepared for that on Wednesday, January 31st, in just a couple of days from now. We have Jerome Powell giving his speech. Okay, and then on top of that, we have all of these earnings coming out. Monday is very minor. We just have SoFi, just a couple of banks again. Tuesday and Thursday are going to be the two most significant days. For Tuesday, we open up with just like Pfizer, GM, UPS, and just a couple of others. Then we have some big tech earnings coming out. After market close, we have Microsoft, AMD, Alphabet, and Starbucks. The biggest one is going to be Microsoft, in my opinion, alongside Google. Microsoft is going to be a huge one. Make sure you watch that very carefully. It is going to have a big effect on the QQQ, a very, very big effect on the QQQ, a big effect on the whole market. Watch that very carefully. Wednesday is going to be a quiet day. Now, we don't have too many earnings on Wednesday, of course. We just have like Boeing and a few others. But then don't forget we have FOMC, so the market's going to make a big move anyways, right? So Tuesday through Thursday are going to be crazy days. We have big earnings on Tuesday. We have FOMC on Wednesday with Jerome Powell's speech. And then Thursday is going to come and things get even crazier as we have Apple, Amazon, and Meta all announcing earnings on the same day, at the same time, essentially. How crazy is that after market close? That's going to be insane, guys. The market's reaction is going to be very interesting on Friday. So we have a very crazy day ahead of us. This is going to affect so many companies out there. We're going to be watching to see what the reaction is, especially as we approach Friday. And it's going to be very telling and very, very important for how things end up going forward. So we're going to be watching all of this very carefully. We'll see how this ends up going. that's going to be absolutely insane. The market's extremely greedy. That's when you want to be a little bit careful. So what do I see on the charts? I'm going to be very brief with this part since I want to kind of like finish this video quickly. My goal was just to give you guys a very, very good overview of how things are looking. The daily on SPY, okay, look at the daily charts. We're very indecisive. We have a doji that's forming. This is looking like it might actually start turning just a little bit downwards. There is a risk of this kind of like, excuse me, guys. I apologize for that. This is basically testing 485, so be very careful with that. On Tesla, looking at the daily, this is showing a little bit of life, but it might just shop around a bit with the potential for SPY to cool off just a bit. This could be a little negative for Tesla, so it might pop back up to 185 or so, maybe a little bit higher, and come back down to 182.5, just chop around a bit. But be a little bit careful with Tesla. We have to see if it could hold 180. On top of that, for the QQQ, this is not looking the strongest. This is actually starting to turn. We have some red days ahead of us. We're going to be watching 423. That's the 5 EMA. If we lose this, there's 421. I'm sorry, 422.5, 421, and 420. If we lose 420, we're going to turn a lot more bearish. So this is starting to turn. Be a little bit careful. This could start turning more bearish. So just be a little bit careful with the QQQ. I'll talk more about the tickers in more detail in a later video. For Nvda, we have a doji on the daily. It could still pop one more time to try to fill this gap back up to like 614 before it comes back down. But this is starting to lose some momentum. This does not mean that Nvidia is going to crash. It simply just means that Nvidia is losing a little bit of its momentum. It's not as strong as how strong it once was. It's starting to slow down a little bit. We want to just be like really, really careful with it when it comes to the way it's been moving and such. So be very careful with Nvidia. It's very important for me to note that. On top of that, I just want to mention that we also have a few more, such as Aapl. Let me just pull up Aapl stock right here. Aapl, in my opinion, is also looking a little bit weaker because when you look at the 4-hour time frame, for instance, the 4-hour is looking a little bit weaker because we have this head and shoulders like structure that is developed. This is what the head and shoulders like structure is looking like, just like this. And this is starting to look more bearish. We had this left shoulder here, right shoulder forming. We had this head up here. This might be testing 191 soon. So Aapl looks a little bit weaker, guys. You want to be very, very careful. But anyways, that's it for the video for now. I just want to keep this nice and short, nice and simple, because we're essentially just approaching basically the end of the day and the weekend's coming up. So I just want to make this short. Be very careful, guys. There's going to be a risk of some downside for the markets, but things could change once we get the big tech earnings. So be very careful. We'll see how this affects the markets. With that being said, enjoy the weekend. I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow. Thank you for listening and peace out.